The last time we were on the banks here at Springvale, we had a fantastic day's fishing. We caught fish of all species on a maggot feeder. It was a bite every cast. I absolutely love this venue, and we are here today on another lake. This is Duchess Lake, and we're going to fish one of my favourite tactics, the waggler. Now, I've been to the on-site tackle shop. I've got some maggots, I've got some pellets. I don't really know a lot about this lake. All I know is it's got a very mixed species sort of vibe to it. We could catch some carp, we could catch some chub, roach again, eyed, you name it. But whatever happens, when I'm fishing a waggler, I always have a great day. I cannot wait to get started. When you're waggler fishing, using balanced tackle is supremely important. And I've got the privilege today of using one of my favourite pieces of kit. Now, this is the CTX Carp Waggler. It's an 11-foot float rod. It's a beautiful item of tackle, nice and light in the hand, and don't be fooled by the carp name. Although I've caught loads of fish on this rod in the summer months, big carp at places like Boston, so we know it can handle those big fish. It's also nice and soft in the tip, so it's perfect for catching those fish ranging from sort of like 4 ounce up to 3, 4, 5, 6 pound, those big hard fighting carp. This rod is ideal for the job. Now, it's a lovely short rod butt. When you're fishing a waggler, I like a nice short rod butt. It means that when you're picking up the catapult, the butt isn't getting in the way. It means you can swing the rod around. The rod should be an extension of your arm, and this rod is certainly that. Let's talk about the reel line. I've got 016. This is an Akuma Invicta reel loaded with 016 reel line. Light lines when you're waggler fishing make your life so much easier. We've got a nasty crosswind today. We want to use the lightest waggler that we can get away with, and sinking the line, casting. It's just made a lot easier with a light reel line. So I wouldn't hesitate to maybe drop down to 014 maybe, but catching some big carp, you probably are on the side of caution. 016 is ideal for the job. Now, let's talk about the waggler. There's two styles of waggler that we could be using today. Straight thick tip wagglers or insert wagglers. I've opted for an insert waggler. When I'm fishing with smaller baits, catching a mixed bag of fish, I think an insert waggler is definitely a lot more sensitive, and we can see it today. Sometimes when the water's a little bit broken, or the sun's in your eyes, or there's big waves on the water, you maybe need a thick tip waggler to be able to see your waggler. It's pointless fishing a float if you cannot see it, because it's how you're going to read your bites. We can see everything really clearly today, so this insert is perfect for supporting the light baits that I plan to use. This is a 3 gram insert waggler. And interestingly, I don't like to use any sort of like links or clips to attach the float to my main line. I just like to try and choose the right float for the conditions and thread the float straight onto the main line. So the reason for that, it makes casting a lot easier. I always feel that the float goes out a lot straighter without anything on the line, but also there's less to tangle. So I've found in the past that sometimes you'll get a few tangles around link swivels and clips and things like that. I don't want any tangles. I want to be fishing effectively all the time, and threading that waggler on the line does that for me. I've trapped the waggler on the line with 1 float stop above it, 2 float stops below just for security, and then because we're loose feeding today and we've got bait falling through the water all the time, I've gone for a strung out shotting pattern. Now, what I'm trying to do is get my presentation to match the loose feed, and by stringing out that shot in rather than bulking it, we can get that slow fall of the hook bait through the water column, and we can see every little indication if we get a bite on the drop. So I've got number 10 stots spread out in the bottom half of the rig, and all the way down here we've got an 8-inch hook length, and I've attached the hook length to the line with a little diamond eye swivel. That just stops spin-ups when you're using light lines and baits like double or triple maggot, which are prone to helicoptering on the way back. It means I'm fishing for more of my session and more effectively and more efficiently. I've got 2 baits with me today, and they are pretty staple when it comes to commercial fisheries. The first one is a bait that's going to get you bites on any venue: maggots. You can't go fishing at this time of year without taking some maggots with you, because you just know that every species in the lake eats maggots. So I'm loose feeding today. I'm loose feeding maggots. They're going to spread over a big distance and hopefully keep a shoal of fish nice and hungry and searching in a large area. I've also got with me some fishery pellets. These are 4mm pellets. Now these pellets will group a lot nicer than those maggots, so I should be able to get them in a tighter area. But also I feel these pellets are going to be key to attracting some better quality fish into my swim. Slipping a pellet into a bait band is also going to get me some bigger fish in comparison to single or double maggot hook baits, and I think those 2 baits are the ideal winter combination. Well, that fish absolutely dragged the rod out of my hand. Incredible bite. And you get a few of those sorts of bites when you're fishing on the drop. Obviously we know that when we're pellet waggler fishing in the summer, maybe when you keep that tight line and the rod tip seems to go before the float even goes under. And as is the case with a lot of the lakes here at Springvale, there's plenty of these to be caught. Lovely chub, and when they take the bait they really want it, as was proved just then. And fishing on the drop, you know, has helped us catch quite a few of these chub. They want to be feeding up in the water, they like the rattle of the bait hitting the water surface, and it's one of the reasons that I'm keeping a few maggots going in the swim. Even though we're feeding those 4mm pellets, keeping a few maggots going into the swim, I think is just helping those chub hang around. So now we're getting the best of both worlds. We're fishing on the bottom, but with that strung out rig, so we're getting a really nice slow fall of the bait, which gives us a chance of a roach or a chub or an hide. But once that bait gets to the bottom, I feel that's when we've got a much better chance of catching a carp or a skimmer. That's not to say we're not going to catch those other species on the bottom, but it does seem to be that those 2 distinct areas of the swim are sort of showing themselves. So if I get a bite pretty quickly, I know that it's a chub or a roach generally, and then if we have to wait for a bite, it's usually been a slightly better fish. Double maggot has been a fantastic bait. It seems to be catching every fish possible. And you know what, if there was a bait to use on any commercial at any time of year, it probably is double red maggot. It's one of those baits that just catch fish. One of the reasons that the waggler is such a good method is that you can target an area that just doesn't seem to be targeted by a lot of anglers. So on loads of commercials, it's all about pole fishing, you know, up to 14 or maybe 16 meters. And we can fish this waggler. We're fishing probably be between distances of 18 and 20 meters at the minute. And that's just past that range where a pole fisherman would be fishing. So those fish are a little bit more comfortable out there, I'm saying. We're also busy. Sometimes when you're fishing a pole, little roach there, sometimes when you're fishing a pole you become a little bit static. You sort of ship out, you sit there, you don't want to pick your rig out and lay it back in, you become a little bit lazy. But with a waggler, you're forced to be casting in and out all the time. So it's a really busy method. And we all know that quite often the busiest anglers catch the most fish. But one of the things that I think is a massive advantage when you're waggler fishing is that you physically can't be as tight with your loose feed and your bait placement as when you're fishing other methods. So no matter how well I try and group my loose feed, it's still going over a really wide area. And I think that's brilliant for keeping a shoal of fish happy. And also, no matter how well I try and cast my waggler out, it's not going down the same hole every time. It's in and around that loose feed, which means that I'm not fishing on a sixpence and I'm not taking fish from the same area all the time. So we're naturally working our whole peg and we're keeping a big shoal of fish happy. And that just helps when you're trying not to spook fish, because you imagine, especially this time of year where you don't want to be constantly catching fish from the same spot all the time, because those fish will just get wary and you'll just stop catching eventually. But we're getting consistent bites by casting around our swim, feeding that large area, altering what we feed. Obviously the downside, and I think it is the only downside really, is you probably aren't as direct, you know, so you are going to miss a few bites. I've just missed a couple of bites there, but we're trying our hardest not to. But I think it's the nature of waggler fishing that you are going to miss a few bites. But we quickly reel in, we have another chuck, bait falls through the water again. You know, we're being busy. Because we've had a bit of a nasty side wind today, it's been important to get the line underneath the surface, and that means casting past my loose feed and then bringing everything back. So I'm casting past my loose feed, rod tip under the surface, flick up, couple of turns of the reel handle just to take up that slack, and that gets the majority of that main line underneath the water surface. It means the float is less likely to skim through the peg, and I can hold that float in position for just a little bit longer. So I'm actually using a line clip today. I've clipped up at about 20-25 metres, and by flicking that line, reeling that couple of turns, I'm effectively fishing around 20 metres. So I'm taking in 3, 4, 5 metres of slack line every time. It's not critical because, as we've mentioned, the loose feed is going over a wide area. It's just about sinking that main line and making sure that float stays in fishing position for as long as possible. Rod and line fishing for me means a long landing net handle, because quite often these fish can pop up just that little bit further out than when you're fishing a pole. So I'm using the CTX. This is the Power Light Match landing net handle. It's in 4 metres, and although it's 4 metres in length, it's really slim, really light, really stiff. Perfect for obviously when you've got a landing net head on the end and you're waving it around at 4 metres out. You want something that's stiff, light and super strong, and that's what this landing net handle is. And I've not needed it for every fish today because some fish have popped up a little bit closer, but several fish today, you know, they've just popped up a little bit too far out for a standard landing net handle, and that's where that longer 4 metre handle comes into play. You just don't want to lose any fish, and so many times I've seen anglers lose fish because the fish pops up too far out and they're trying to bring the fish across the surface towards the landing net. I find it's much better to actually go to the fish. You'll land more fish like that. One of the most important weapons in your armoury, you know, when you're waggler fishing, is your catapult. You need to be feeding bait out there. You need to be drawing fish in the swim and keeping them happy all the time, and using the right catapult is really important. So let me talk to you about the key aspects of the right catapult. Firstly, I've tried using really light elastics on catapults. I've now settled on using nice, strong elastic. For whatever reason, pulling back a stronger elastic, not as far, groups your bait a lot better than when you're really pulling back really light elastic and it's sort of like wallowing out the bait into the swim. So nice thick elastic. It's also more durable, so you're going to get more sessions out of a catapult. Then let's talk about the pouch, and I think the pouch is really, really important, especially when you're using baits like pellets and bigger particle baits. I now like these pouches that have got a flat base. The flat base just seems to group the pellets or those particle baits a lot better. So I like a pouch with a flat base, nice thick elastic. The next important thing is, if you break a catapult during a session, you might as well pack up and go home. So make sure you've got a couple of duplicates all ready to go, because waggler fishing, no matter what time of year, is intense. You are feeding all the time, every cast, every 30 seconds. Chances are the elastic could snap, the pouch could break. Make sure you've got a couple of spares and you're ready to go. Well, it's that time of day where the fishing is just getting better and better. Always thought with this loose feeding approach we were going to build a swim up, and that's proved to be the case. We've had loads of chub. They've been our bonus fish today, and it's been brilliant fishing. Firing those maggots in, firing a few of those 4mm pellets over the top as well, make a lovely little rattle and this centralise everything a little bit better, those 4 mils, because we can feed them a bit tighter. Now, oh, he's a beauty. He's a lovely fish. Now you might have noticed that we've got a different waggler on to the one we started. That's because the wind got up a little bit, and I talked about straight wagglers, and if we wanted to lay a little bit of line on the bottom, a straight waggler with no insert, slightly thicker tip, that's a brilliant way of doing that, because we can lay 8 inches or so on the bottom, and that thicker tip isn't going to drag under, it's going to sort of hold in place. This is a beautiful fish, you know. We've had a lot of smaller chub today, I'm saying around £1.5, £2 mark, but that is one of the better fish. Absolutely stunning fish. To get out at this time of year when the water's freezing cold and still get bites, it's absolutely brilliant. The waggler, those baits, this balanced setup, it's been a joy to come fishing today. Springvale very rarely lets us down, if ever. Loads of bites, busy fishing, that's what it's all about for me.